All right. So we still need Jim, Kristen, and Jamie. Linda, I'm assuming Bill's going to join us.
He is. He's in a meeting right now. I'll just do a friendly reminder. He knows. Oh, they're wrapping it up right
Do the unfriendly reminder if you could.
now.
Jim is here.
Yep, sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's okay. All right, are we all set then, Linda?
I see everyone, so I think we're all set, Rich.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead then and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call, Linda.
Rich Rossway,
Here.
James Randall,
Here.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Here.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Here.
James Hewitt,
Here.
Keith Glendon,
Here.
Glenn Sarka,
Here.
all board members present.
Item number 3, approval of the agenda.
Make a
Make-
motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Sarka, was that supported by Mr. Glendon? Should we do a roll call on this, Linda? Let's just do a roll call then on the agenda.
We do need to, yes.
Okay.
Rich Rossway,
Yes.
James Randall,
Yes.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Keith Glendon,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka,
Yes, and it may have been Jamie that made the motion. It wasn't me.
Okay.
motion carries 7-0. Motion made by James Randall, approved by Keith Glendon.
Actually, I think it was seconded by Mr. Hewitt.
It was. That was me. Yep.
Motion made by James Randall, seconded by James Hewitt.
Yep.
I'm doing a real good job of listening. My wife tells me I don't listen. I guess that's
We
pretty.
can blame it on Zoom and, old age.
Okay, item 4, superintendent's report. Bill, or is Alex going to take this?
Yeah, again, reason for this meeting is to really inform the board, give them the fall athletics plan. I forwarded you what Alex had put together, I think on Thursday or Friday. We have Alex here. I didn't realize we were going to have another guest, Michael Jordan, in the background back there. So Michael has joined our board meeting. That's a first. Alex, I'll let you take the reins here and kind of go through for not only the board, but for the public, that plan, and certainly the update, everything you're hearing as far as the processes go from the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me this morning, and all board members for taking the time to listen and review this return to activity plan that will helpfully allow our students to resume some extracurricular activity here in the next week or so. But it's been a busy summer for us on the MHSAA Representative Council, and that's our representative board for the MHSAA, comprised of different athletic directors from around the state. And I've got the privilege of representing our Class A and B schools on that board. So it's kind of been an enlightening process just to hear what, not only being able to voice our concerns here in the UP, but also to hear the most prevalent concerns coming out of the downstate schools, especially some of those in the bigger city markets there. But last Wednesday, July 29th, we had our meeting, and one of the proposals that was ultimately approved for the season start dates represented a phase-in plan from our traditional season start dates for fall sports. What was approved was allowing the low-risk sports of dance and sideline cheer to start on August 10th. Additional low-risk sports of cross-country and girls tennis, allowing them to begin practice on August 12th. Competition for girls tennis may begin on August 19th, and cross-country may begin on August 21st. Then taking a look at the moderate and high-risk sports as defined by the MHSAA, just depending on contact and kind of the individual situations surrounding those sports. Those moderate and high-risk sports are football, boys soccer, and volleyball. But this phase-in plan would allow them to begin practice on August 10th for football and August 12th for soccer and volleyball. Competition, which includes scrimmages and contests, may not take place in these sports until at least Monday, August 24th. Taking a look at football specifically, that first week of practice, which is currently scheduled for August 10th through The 15th would, or through the 16th, I should say, would be a week of only helmets only. And then updated timelines for possible competition in those moderate and high risk sports is going to be issued by the MHSAA by Thursday, August 20th. So, what this represents for our low risk sports, you can see that the plan established practice start dates for the low risk sports, as well as practice start dates for the moderate and high risk sports. But it's got a tentative start date for competition for the moderate and high risk sports, and we're going to be reviewing the individual situations with those sports before coming to a conclusion by August 20th. When you take a look at our return to activity plan, there's a few different key points of emphasis there. Understanding that this return to activity plan is done in collaboration with the information and details provided by the MHSAA, as well as being reviewed by our athletic training staff. And with all that information, we've established protocols and guidelines to present a safe and supportive environment to address the challenges of COVID-19 in the various athletic settings associated with fall sports. Each sport program may identify different protocols based on its unique demands. Some of those guidelines include phased implementation. However, in combination, this framework establishes the needed safeguards for all impacted audience, not only students, but our coaches, staff, athletic trainers, fans, the whole gambit of what we're going to see associated with athletics events. These approaches may be managed differently as conditions change, but always with an emphasis on safety based on the available information from our local health department and state government. First and foremost, wanting to protect our school day and hopefully returning to in-person education, but these procedures and guidelines will evolve. Seems like the information that we have changes pretty much on a daily, if not hourly basis. But understanding, while these are our guidelines today, the information that we have next week could easily impact some of these things, namely that start date for competition. But in terms of the representative council, we're going to be meeting each and every Wednesday just to review exactly where we're at and how the start dates for both practice and competition and what our schedules might be looking like for the fall. So from there, taking a look at the fall sports overview, as I had mentioned, the start dates for fall sideline cheer, dance team, and football is going to be next Monday, August 10th, hopefully. And then for cross country, girls tennis, volleyball, and boys soccer, will be Wednesday, August 12th. And then the start date for football practice with full equipment would be 2 weeks from today, August 17th. A quick overview of what I've outlined there for the precautionary measures. All athletics coaches, both paid and volunteer, are being required to participate in the National Federation of State High School Associations COVID-19 for coaches and administrators online training course prior to the first practice date for their respective sports. Proof of completion is being completed by me, and this just goes over how to handle certain things, the importance of social distancing and the drills and during practices, things like that, and also placing an increased emphasis on the importance of our pre-screening process, how to get and welcome students safely for practice, get through practice, and then send them on their way. When it comes to face coverings, athletes, while participating on the field or court, are not required to wear face coverings, but are permitted to do so. Bench personnel, so our coaches, are required to wear face coverings at all times. This includes athletes not currently in a game, but also our coaches, managers, athletic trainers, media, and anyone else that might be associated with our games settings. It is recommended that game officials wear face coverings, but it is not required while carrying out their duties. Contest management, school administrators, media, and staff will all be wearing face coverings, and spectators at permissible venues will also be wearing face coverings. I do have a protocol for suspected cases, as well as A separate protocol for positive cases. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review that. Bill, did you want me to go over those two in detail?
I would, as long as, again, this is for the public as well, Alex. So knowing that you have some due diligence with the plan here.
Sure. Our protocol for handling any suspected cases of COVID-19. If a student, coach, or official is or becomes sick on site with symptoms of COVID-19, they'll be placed in a clearly identified and designated quarantine area with a mask in place until they can be picked up. Staff who are identified to care for students must also wear a mask. A symptomatic coach or student athlete will be sent home with a parent or designated adult until they have tested negative or have been released from isolation according to the local health department's protocols. Students, coaches, and/or officials should be transported by their parent or guardian, emergency contact, or ambulance if they are clinically unstable for off-site testing. If an ambulance is called or someone is being brought to the hospital, there should be an attempt to call the hospital first to alert them that the person may have COVID-19. If a student, coach, or official becomes sick, they must not use group transportation to return home. So that is our protocol for any suspected cases of COVID-19 that do arise while on site for either practice or competition, in addition to those that we do find out as a result of a call from the local health department. So a separate protocol for positive cases of COVID-19. The Marquette County Health Department will be contacted by the athletic director or MSHS for further direction. They will likely initiate contact tracing following regular public health practices. All participating schools will cooperate with the appropriate local health department if a confirmed case of COVID-19 is identified and collect the contact information for any close contacts, meaning any individuals less than 6 feet apart for more than 15 minutes of the infected individual from 2 days before he or she showed symptoms to the time when he or she was last at the event. Close contacts should be quarantined for 14 days at home. Local health officials may identify other contacts who require quarantine. Administrators of the school involved, as well as students, families, officials in attendance, will be notified of the presence of any laboratory positive or clinically diagnosed cases of COVID-19, so there continues to be awareness and close observation of any symptoms. Student communicable disease related information is protected health information. The individual with COVID-19 won't be identified by name to any non-family or non-health department officials. Students, coaches, or officials who were at the event but were not in close contact with a positive case will continue to be closely monitored for any symptoms of COVID-19. At this time, these individuals are not required to receive testing unless they develop COVID-19 related symptoms. Areas used by the sick person will be closed off and not used until after cleaning and disinfecting them. This includes surfaces or any shared objects in the area. If possible, cleaning and disinfecting of the area will not occur until at least 24 hours has elapsed. If 24 hours is not feasible, as much time as possible will be allowed to pass before cleaning or disinfection occurs. So with that being said, in addition to these protocols, our pre-screening process, we are very fortunate to have our athletic training coverage covered for us by our athletic training staff from UP Rehab Services as well as UP Health System. So they're going to be assisting our coaches at all practices and competitions with our pre-screening process that will see our student participants arrive at a practice or a competition. They will have their temperatures taken, as well as being asked the pre-screening questions looking for any symptoms of COVID-19. So as students arrive, they're going to be going through that process before being cleared to either participate in the practice or competition. In regards to our practice schedules, at this time, it is recommended that MSHS athletics teams adhere to the first allowable practice dates as published by the MHSAA last Wednesday, which again is August 10th for cheer, dance team, and football, and August 12th for cross country, boys soccer, girls tennis, and volleyball. All athletics teams will be responsible for following the precautionary measures, rules for face coverings, and protocol for suspected and positive cases of COVID-19. In addition, our competition schedules, traditionally Marquette Senior High School competes in regular season events against schools located in not only the Upper Peninsula, but Wisconsin and the Lower Peninsula as well. As part of the MHSA's decision regarding fall sports, no events may be held involving more than 4 teams at one site at a single time, nor can cross-country meets involving more than 70 runners per race occur. Based on that information, as well as having the safety of individuals involved and our ability to minimize the risk of exposing our constituents, students, staff, and fans to COVID-19, it is recommended that MSHS alter its athletics competition schedules for the fall 2020 regular season to only compete against high schools located in the Upper Peninsula. Postseason competition for fall sports, as well as a determination regarding the winter and spring sports seasons, can be determined at a later date when more information on the potential risk of COVID-19 exposure at those events is known. This being the recommendation based on a variety of factors, but taking a look at the potential necessity for our students to be tested again upon their arrival from competitions before returning to school. Focusing on Upper Peninsula competition wouldn't necessarily deem that a requirement. So wanting to minimize missed class time, also being able to eliminate the overnight trips for any regular season competition being a big thing. Also taking a look at just sheer travel time, things like that, and keeping our students, fans, and coaches safe. In terms of hosting athletics practices, as of last Wednesday, it is permissible to have indoor gatherings of more than 50 individuals and outdoor gatherings of no more than 500 individuals. During athletics practices and competitions, all student athletes, coaches, staff, auxiliary groups, that would include our marching band, cheerleaders, dance team, media, and fans are included in the gathering limit total. All precautionary measures and rules for face coverings outlined in our return to activity plan must be adhered to. Any indoor workouts involving pods of student athletes would include a safe pre-screening process for those arriving at the facility, sanitizing following a workout, as well as allowing those student athletes to safely exit the facility before any student athletes in the next group or pod are able to be admitted. Locker rooms and showers currently will not be utilized. Designated restrooms and drinking fountains will be made available to our students. Common equipment, whether it's balls, pads, dummies, anything that our student athletes utilize as part of practice, will be sanitized prior to and after each workout. Further guidance to be followed is included in the MHSAA sport-specific information that is available on the MHSAA website and also as part of our return to activity plan. Competition limitations by sport. Cross country, we are limited to the 500 individuals as part of an outdoor gathering. This includes our runners, coaches, fans, and media. And we are limited to no more than 70 runners per race, and that would be 70 runners in a boys varsity race, 70 runners in a girls varsity race, and 70 runners in our sub-varsity races as well. So obviously that can add up quickly. Football, we are also limited to 500 total individuals. That would include our players, coaches, staff, those auxiliary groups that I had mentioned with cheerleaders, dance team, and marching band. Face coverings going to be required by all in attendance except for student athletes while competing or performing. Our concession stands will not be utilized. And additional game day protocol will need to be established to address some of the following factors, and also keeping in mind that we're going to be remaining as flexible as possible based on future changes. So taking a look at our visiting team and officials locker rooms, showers, our auxiliary group attendance at competitions, as well as some additional protocol for any back-to-back game situations that we have for the upcoming season, as well as our spectator admission guidelines. When it comes to our auxiliary group attendance, I think there's some additional things that we can look at, and those would be all items for future discussion. But if our auxiliary groups, our marching band, dance team, cheerleaders, our ability to host them while also potentially hosting outside visitors, if we do not want to go down the road of particularly having auxiliary groups in attendance. We also do have our Red SBN program and potentially the ability to, through a tape delay, record those performances in advance while being able to broadcast them as part of our in-game broadcast through the NFHS network. So we've got a variety of resources and things to work with and through as we look to provide the best experience possible for not only our student athletes that are participating, but also our friends and family that would be looking to enjoy these contests as well. Moving on to boys soccer, we are again limited to 500 total individuals for our players, coaches, fans, and media. And we are also faced with the limitation of, with soccer being a sport that participates in tournaments during the season, we have the requirement that no more than 4 teams may compete at any one competition site at a single time. So that definitely does put a limitation on our ability to participate in tournaments and keeping things limited that way. But again, there's things that we can work through to continue to make our fall experience for boys soccer the best that we possibly can. Girls tennis, again, 500 total individuals, and not a whole lot of limitations other than, again, that tournament piece where no more than 4 participating teams can be participating at a single site at a single time. And face covering is going to be required by all in attendance except for the student athletes during their warm-up and match. And that would include our student athletes that are also watching other matches while they're not competing. And lastly, our only indoor sport of the fall season, volleyball, currently limited to 50 total individuals in the game setting. So face covering is required by all in attendance except for student athletes during their warm-up and match time. No more than 4 teams may compete at any one competition site at a single time. And for those familiar with our competition routine for volleyball, we often do compete against another school in all 3 levels of volleyball. So our freshman teams, our JV teams, and then our varsity match following. And so the way that 4-team limitation goes into effect for volleyball is we would have our same normal sub-varsity routine with our freshman and JV matches taking place simultaneously. So those are our 4 teams for that single site. Once those JV and freshman matches conclude, we would clear the gym and then bring in the varsity teams for their matchup. So that 4-team limitation, you can look to do a quad match with 4 varsity teams in attendance, but I think for our normal volleyball routine and the importance of getting our sub-varsity teams matches, we would very much primarily be looking to stick to our normal 3-level dual match structure with another school. The concession stand for home volleyball matches will not be utilized. Additional game day protocol similar to that of football is going to be established to address those visiting team official locker rooms, showers, as well as potential spectator admission. But I think until that total indoor gathering limitation of 50 increases to a higher amount, it's not going to be possible for outside admission to take place within the sport of volleyball. But again, there's time for that to potentially go up. But unless that does, we'd be in a situation where no outside admission or no outside spectators could attend volleyball matches. In terms of our media coverage, live video streaming of MSHS athletics events is going to continue to be administered by the Red SBN program and broadcasted through the NFHS network. An effort will be made to cover as many home athletics events as possible during the fall 2020 sports seasons, so that family friends not able to be in attendance can enjoy those contests through the NFHS network. This, again, may also be used as a means to broadcast marching band, cheer team, and dance team performances by recording them in advance. Radio coverage of all varsity football games will be provided by Fox Sports Marquette. And lastly, in our return to activity plan, we have the MHSAA important return to play topics that are non-sport specific, but include much of the information that is included in our general return to play document here. We also have the COVID-19 athlete and coach monitoring form, as well well as MHSAA's fall planning documents for hosting events in the sports of cross country, football, girls tennis, and volleyball. So a lot of sports specific information there and best practices on how to safely host home athletics events, as well as some best practices on how to safely get your student athletes to and away from home contests. So I think that concludes our return to activity plan for the 2020 fall sports seasons. Please let me know if at this point you have any questions or concerns regarding that document.
Alex, if I could start real quick before the board starts to ask questions. Could you just give the board community a quick rundown of what the process has been for the MHSAA, what it looks like moving forward to fall sports? Obviously, I know that there is no right or wrong in this as far as how people feel about potentially playing fall sports, whether you should, whether you shouldn't. But the MHSAA has a pretty clearly established decision-making unit. You had talked about last week, they had voted to continue to move ahead with fall sports. What does that look like? Are they meeting weekly? Are they meeting bi-weekly? What's the communication been from the MHSAA to us participating districts?
And so right now, as a representative council for the past 3 weeks, we've been meeting on a weekly basis. And then prior to that, for the summer period, we've been meeting every 2 weeks just to review kind of the current situation. Mark Ewell and his staff also have a contact in the governor's office who provides us kind of with the update on decision-making process from that end and where things currently stand as they pertain to crowd limitations and what phases different regions of the state are in and how those would come into play. It's a lengthy process, but as it looks on a week-to-week basis, things are getting reevaluated on a little bit quicker timeline right now. And so we're currently at, and so we do have our first competition date published, but this is really a fancy beginning of practice schedule for us. This allows us to get started with many of the things that we've actually been doing over the course of the summer right now, but just with a little bit more formalized procedures to it. Our football optional workouts have been taking place with a pre-screening process that's been running well. Girls tennis has been doing the same, cross country as well, as well as volleyball and an outdoor setting. And so, the beginning of practice plan, it's the MHSAA feels like currently it's very important to get our students back engaged with some school affiliated activities. And actually that this would be the safest route to go, with the feeling that if we don't begin our school affiliated activities process with how safely we feel like that we can do them with the resources that we have, that an outside entity may look to engage our students from different communities through some other means, whether that be through AAU teams or club teams or anything like that. Sorry, can we say that again? Bill,
You've been cutting out, Alex.
Your question.
Your internet connection at the moment is a little bit slow. I know you're fast, but your speaking is coming across real slow at the moment. I think most of us got the gist of what you were communicating. What I heard last is the MHSA feels strongly about moving forward, at least from a practice standpoint at this point. So other groups from the outside don't fill that in, and maybe have our student athletes in an unstructured environment someplace participating in athletics, whether that be AAU or some other system, is what I heard, I think. Is that correct? Now it's worse.
Yeah. No idea what he just said.
Yeah, and so that's the last piece that I just wanted to go over. Yeah, that's correct. Oh.
Alex, maybe try cutting the video and just being with us audio, see if that speeds it up a little.
Let me, still coming through bad?
Nope, that works.
Did that help?
Yes.
Okay. And so the last piece that you covered was the last thing of importance on my end.
I think they just lost him again.
Is everything coming through okay?
Nope.
Still breaking up a little bit. Wonders.
How about now? Is this getting any better?
Yes, that was
Okay.
a little better. How about if we open it up to questions you guys have for Alex then at this time?
Yeah, with my understanding then, we're on for doing practices right now, but then August 20th, they're gonna make another decision whether to go ahead or not. Is that correct? He's muted.
Now I got you back, Jamie. Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Apparently what you're saying is that right now it's open for practice until August 20th, and they'll make a decision whether to move ahead at that point. Is that correct?
And so starting next Monday, what we would have is, yes, practices would begin for some of those sports on August 10th, for some others on August 12th. The established first competition dates for the low-risk sports, so meaning girls be adhered to, but for the moderate and high-risk sports of boys soccer, volleyball, and football, we would find out if the first date of competition would need to be pushed back, and we would find that out on August 20th.
Okay. What is there a plan A and a plan B? If on August 20th they're going to push the dates back, is there some dates they're looking at, or?
It would be based on the information that we would have, at our next meeting. So we have a representative council meeting that's coming up Wednesday, where we're going to take a look and see if there's any new information that would alter those first practice and first competition dates. But aside from that, right now plan A is to hopefully, with the blessing of the board, being able to move forward with that all UP scheduling model. That would be plan A. Plan B would then be based on any changes to the first competition dates or how those things look, being able to, and it's going to be some adjusting on the fly as we're informed of any changes. But with an all UP scheduling model, in talking to the various athletic directors in the UP, everyone is very much on board with doing whatever we can, whatever it takes to make our fall sports seasons the best that we can for the students.
Okay, so with your probably daily and weekly updates between now and the time that it starts, you could just be in touch with Bill so that we can be updated on a regular basis.
Yes, absolutely. And so Bill's office and in communication with John Young et al. As well is always my first stop after our representative council meetings, just to keep them updated and see if any adjustments need to be made with our current operation.
Thank you.
Is there any provision, let's say we have information, it's posted online of a student that's kind of down at McCarty's Cove, not engaging in social distancing and things like that. Would that type of behavior fall under kind of code of conduct behavior where we would be able to restrict their participation in practice or sports to protect the other students?
I guess it'd be a little bit of a difficult.
You're muted.
I think probably where he was going to go, Glenn, is a little bit of that hearsay, whether it's McCarty's Cove or home or at a block party with friends. It would be a little difficult without any type of specific evidence.
Sure. That's every case of a code of conduct type violation, though. And I guess the assumption is we have good information, but can we do anything about it if we have good information that they're doing those things?
I think the best that we can do is what we do when those student athletes arrive, go through the pre-screening process, taking a look at symptoms and anything like that, along with our athletic training staff, while we have them in our control, and then to the time that we release them. But like Bill said, I think it's a little tough to monitor some of those things and hold them accountable.
Can you help us understand a little bit about in the case of a COVID positive, the action, as I understand it, is going to be to take that student, out of circulation, if you will, in practices, and those that have been immediately in contact with that student will be monitored. Given that football is a higher risk activity, and given what we know about asymptomatic spread, can you help me understand why we don't have a little bit more restrictive? For example, if we have a known positive on a football team a month and a half from now, why don't we make a policy that football just stops until we have an all clear for all who have been involved in that activity?
Well, I think for the sport of football, that contact tracing is going to be a little bit more extensive than it would in some of our other sports, girls tennis or cross country, for example, and probably result in more of a likelihood that we would see a larger percentage of football participants, needing to quarantine based on that criteria, just with the sheer contact tracing and things like that. And so, that could easily be the case. I don't know that if we do see a positive test, while the student's either not participating or has had limited participation, I guess it's just tough to have one blanket policy that would fit every situation. But if we're going through the contact tracing protocol and things like that, I think it easily could have that same result.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know it's a difficult one. It's just that one's the one that's, I think, maybe the most concerning to me about this plan, is that the plan seems to be ignoring the reality that given incubation times and asymptomatic spread, football is going to be particularly difficult to potentially to control. And I just wondered if we might be able to strengthen that particular clause for the higher risk activity, whether that had been considered. On a related note, I wonder if, sorry, Jamie, just a follow-on question regarding football for the next couple of weeks as we're, there's a lot in flux. I'm aware that some districts are postponing sports altogether until the spring in Michigan right now. And MIAA has canceled competitions in the fall. So, there's a lot in flux. And I just hate to see us have something, an outbreak happen as a result of decisions we made during practice season. Has there been any talk about football just being like conditioning drills only for the next couple of weeks? So there is distancing at all times while things are kind of taking shape still?
Absolutely. And essentially that's what next week represents. The only equipment being utilized next week are just footballs. And so social distancing will still be happening at all times. It's just going to be, it's almost like a getting ready period, because a lot of our students haven't been to all of our voluntary summer conditioning workouts, things like that. So next week is literally just getting them helmets on and getting ready for the season through conditioning activities.
Okay.
And so it's almost kind of like a soft opening, if you will.
Got it.
Yeah, what if you have a situation where you've got like 5 members of the team are closely involved with a person who ends up contracting it, that's a happier team. Is that just going to shut down the season, or how does that work?
It could potentially, but like anything else with the contact tracing, we're going to be monitoring symptoms. Our athletic trainers are going to be a huge help to us, and having testing take place if and when it's needed. But when it comes to contact tracing, we're going to be following the local health department's lead and pretty much operating based on what they tell us.
Okay, so it is possible that you could end up with a really bad situation.
Yeah, just as we're seeing in Major League Baseball and a lot of other organizations.
Yeah. Okay.
And if we're not confident that another school district is doing everything they can, what are our options about, say, canceling a football game if we've got information that another school has had an issue, and again, we're not confident that they've dealt with it sufficiently?
Absolutely. And, I think that's a strong potential reality as well. So it's going to be regular communication between myself and that other athletic director. The other nice thing about, moving potentially to an all UP scheduling model would just be our proximity to available information. If we stick with downstate schools on our schedules, we might not know exactly what's going on in a Traverse City community or a further downstate community. But when it's taking place in an Escanaba or a Gladstone or a Menominee, we're going to have that media coverage and know exactly what's going on. And so if we don't feel good about the current climate in Menominee or anything like that, or how positive tests are being handled, then we can easily make changes to our competition schedules and act accordingly.
Good.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of this is going to take place on the fly, and we're going to have to make decisions because we're not going to be able to play out every possible scenario. But from what I'm understanding, we're not doing any testing up front. We're waiting until we actually see some type of symptoms in students. We're not doing any pre-screening.
No, we are doing pre-screening. Pre-screening will take place before every practice and competition.
Right.
Well, that's
Screening, but not
But
pre-testing.
that's
Right. We're not
testing.
Yeah.
And what is the justification for not having a one-time kind of baseline test for all of our athletes at the beginning of the season?
Well, that would be something that would be, I guess, up to. It's not really part of our current physical form and medical exam process, and I guess it would just be, again, difficult to require of all students. But it could be something to look at.
Is it something that the health department would be able to participate in because it's a public health issue? Maybe there's some resources there.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, Glenn. I mean, the health department offered free screenings, drive-up screenings early on for essential people, people working in hospitals, restaurants, and whatever else. So getting them involved, it could. I mean, since we're opening it up to playing, maybe the health department will be willing to help out. I mean, does it put football as an essential deal? Right? That's a good question.
It is.
But they could be a good.
I appreciate the question. I think this is a microcosm of what the whole society is going through, though, right? So I test a student today and he's negative, and then he goes and makes a poor choice tonight, and he ends up being positive tomorrow. Unless we have mandated ongoing testing like what we see in the professional, I don't know that a one-time test really answers the issues that we have. They may answer it for a particular day, but these changes are going to continue.
That's exactly forward. The concern I have with the other question, right? Because if we're not testing our athletes on an ongoing basis, especially in high risk situations like football, how do we avoid a situation like the Georgia Day Camp? And if we're not going to test unless they're symptomatic, if we're not going to test proactively, it does seem like we're. So what are we doing with regard to in the reopening plan? I didn't see any rubric about the direction of the data. I mean, do we have any policy that with this whole sports discussion that has to do with what the numbers are doing trend wise? I mean, it's starting to be pretty clear that if a pandemic is not in control in the local community, it can't be controlled in the schools. So are we taking a weekly look at the positivity rates and the trend line of what the testing in our community and region is revealing? And do we have trigger points defined or not?
Well, I think we're getting ready to get an artificial bump because you've got a bunch of people coming in this next couple of weeks into Northern, and we're testing everybody.
Yeah.
So you're going to get an artificial increase in cases just by testing more people, and then you're going to do tracing testing, and you're going to see more there. So I don't know what that means when you're going to start throwing in just extra people to test that haven't been tested yet, because you're going to see an increase.
Well, and that's not, I mean, how artificial is it when those positive cases, 8,000 new students are going to be in contact with some of our high school students as well, at parties and so forth. So, I mean, we can't fool ourselves. That's going to happen. So what are we doing with respect to those numbers, if anything?
On a day-to-day basis, it would be very much following the instruction and in regular check-ins with our local health departments, as well as other schools in the area, just to see kind of best gauge the climate. But aside from that, it's also going to be taking direction from the MHSAA and the decisions that they're making on an ongoing basis. I mean, it's very easy to see right now that Mark Yule wants to do everything within his power to make sure that we have fall sports taking place in the fall, but at the same time, he's responsible enough to make sure that if we can't do them in the right way, we're not going to do them. And so, that direction from the MHSA looks very much at that data, and although it's on more of a statewide basis, that's what he looks at and gets guidance on what we should do for fall sports.
So just to be clear then, we do not in our current plan have any defined trigger points with respect to cancellation of sporting events or anything. There's no bailout based on community data or health related trigger points.
No.
It was interesting that the MSHAA I mean, the vote was only 10-9. That means at least 50% of the people didn't agree with this idea.
It definitely was a close vote. You know, but I certainly do agree with the mindset that if an extracurricular activity experience doesn't exist through the school, that it will exist elsewhere. And I've got all the confidence in the world between our athletic trainers and our coaches that we can do this safer than anybody else can. And so why not have the control remain with us through these experiences, as opposed to then all of a sudden we run the risk of travel teams popping up and other things that further mix our students with those in other communities under different factors and different procedures, where it's actually a much more harmful situation than if we provide the experiences here through the school.
It's probably too early for us to have done this, but I wondered, as we were going through the different actions that are going to be taken, have we run any kind of a financial analysis on the cost implications of additional sanitation, additional coordination, testing, logistics, whatever else? Do we have any idea what this is going to cost us as opposed to a regular year?
With financial implications, you know, it's certainly not the driving force in the recommendation to switch to an all-UP scheduling model, but there will be quite a bit of cost savings with transportation for teams not going downstate, things like that. So on the financial side, you know, sure, we're going to be the miscellaneous expenses for sanitizing equipment and things like that is going to be going up, but you know, there's other areas that we can cut back in as well.
Thanks.
Without, but to be honest, to that question as well, Alex, you're not going to have a fan base that are going to be paying admission fees to attend these contests, so that will be a significant hit as well. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, Bill, I'm assuming we also have a fairly significant uptick in things like cleaning supplies, and I mean, I don't know what the locker room protocols are for the people that are using the locker room, but that's got to be a pretty heavy. So I'm just curious what.
We're in the, to be honest, Mr. Glendon, and I'll give that to you next Wednesday when we have our next board meeting. Of late, it's been in the tens of thousands. It wouldn't surprise me. Deb Berry's better at keeping track of those numbers. I've just been spending. She's been calculating how much I've been spending. It wouldn't surprise me that we're not already close to approaching six figures in masks and cleaning supplies and cleaning systems. I think the cleaning systems we were purchasing alone were what, 3,200 a piece times 12, almost 40 grand right there. Let alone the 40,000 disposable masks and all the other things that we've been ordering, the gallons by the hundreds of hand sanitizer. We have encountered significant expenses.
All right.
Hey, Alex, I have a question. I know maybe it's hard to answer, but with our participation levels, I'm assuming, let's say football, what our typical participation is, there's probably going to be, or do you anticipate some kind of a drop just for those students who prefer not to play based on the current health standards here in Marquette? Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Maybe a slight decrease, but based on our numbers that have been coming in for voluntary workouts from time to time and those that we've been seeing in terms of total numbers, I expect us to be right where we traditionally are. Although, again, maybe perhaps a slight decrease, but nothing that would jeopardize our 3 football team format, 3 volleyball team, 3 boys soccer, and keeping our cross country numbers there too. It's pretty easy to see that our students have been clamoring for activity, and I think that trend's certainly going to continue here.
That's good news. Thanks.
So if I can just add, I think the one thing Alex is looking for is a blessing at this point to set up an all UP schedule, number one. Number two, something that I would walk away from this meeting, listening to the board, and something that we should have considered, but out of the million things we're supposed to consider, we obviously missed this, but I think it was a pretty big one. I would like to see maybe Alex and I come back to you next Wednesday at our meeting with a policy on protocol when we do have cases. I think it is important for our parents and our student athletes to understand. Let's just hypothetically say football. I have 2 cases. Guess what? Football, we're going to be postponed for the next 14 days. We're going to cancel those contests, whatever that looks like. I don't want to, I don't know what that policy looks like, but I think it's important for us to come back to you with a policy that our student athletes and our parents understand. So to Mr. Sarka's point, instead of necessarily penalizing student athletes because they go to McCarty's Cove and they act in an unprotected manner, what happens is those student athletes understand if I come back in that unprotected manner and both myself and I expose another teammate or two, I jeopardize the fact that we would cancel a number of weeks of practices and or games for my team. So that hopefully leads to a more responsible behavior for those athletes who wish their season to continue, if that makes sense. So I think we could certainly do that and have that added to this plan for next Wednesday.
Thank you. And that's all I meant, Phil, was that,
yep,
to tie in that off-field behavior to how it's going to impact the team and the community.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Bill, I mean, it may not need to be a specific policy, but I would like us to have some consistent understanding of what, if anything, the relationship between community-based data and numbers are going to be on our decision-making, right? Like, sure. Is there a point at which we see a rise in cases or a trend or something that says, nope, this is our trigger because of what's happening in the community? We're going to take further actions on restriction of sports.
Sure, both locally, and we could also include that for schools that we're competing against, right? If Gogebic County has a sudden uptick and we're playing Ironwood, then that factors into our consideration whether we move forward with that Friday night game. I understand where you're coming from. We can look at that as well.
And my comment on that, at least at this point so far, is unless I have a misunderstanding of what we've just been talking about, the reconvening of in-school face-to-face instruction, is that we don't have, I don't believe anyway, at this point, like what Mr. Glendon may be referring to as a hard number of, if this classroom or if this building reaches this threshold, that the classroom stops, the building stops, we shut down this bus route, whatever. We don't have that in place. And I don't know if we can set that parameter at this point. I don't know if it's wise to do so. I'm not saying I have the right answer, but there's just so much unknown that, again, if I were thinking, just to try to give a real life example, if one of our local grocery stores ended up having a positive cashier who had been checking out literally hundreds of people per day for weeks, does that mean that they shut down the entire store for the next 2 weeks? I don't know that if that is the right thing to do, but I agree, maybe we need to have some parameters, but I don't think we need to set this specifically on athletics because, again, you can have a number of students who have a like interests of anything that is extracurricular, and they may be gathering together and maybe have the potential to bring that into our classroom on a daily basis. So I think we need to be cautious about where we set those parameters too. I'm not saying that they don't need to exist, but we need to be uniform across how that goes. I don't think we need to just restrict this to sports. If you restrict it to sports only, then I think you have to do that to every extracurricular across the board. I don't care if it's a study group, or if it's a a musical class, musical group, theater group, whatever it may be. I think we just need to be consistent if we are going to set something like that and make a precedent. But
yeah, I see your point, Mr. Hewitt. I think my concern there is that we've already somehow determined that football is higher risk than sitting in a classroom. And so I think we've made a determination that there are risk gradients, and maybe there is something. I'm not the health expert. I just know there's a conspicuous lack of anything like that, not only for us, but in the community, at the professional level, whatever. So I guess I'm just hoping that we have put the right thought into whether we should have those trigger points, and if so, what they should be.
Good point.
So Bill, when you say you want our blessing, do you prefer us to make some type of a motion, or is it just a matter of,
I don't think this is typically a board action. I think, understand, nobody is wrong. Regardless of the opinion, nobody is wrong right now. And I think Alex's point of a UP only schedule is going to affect some families and some coaches and some players who want to play Traverse City or Petoskey or some downstate team. And whether that's football, whether that's cross country, whether that's tennis, at this point, the action he's taking is to say, I'm going to develop a UP only schedule. It's going to save on travel time. It's going to save on students being in close quarters for travel for a certain amount. It also allows us to be better at monitoring what's happening potentially in other communities just via communication, and our silence to him moving forward with that is that we're okay with him moving forward with that type of schedule for the short term, obviously.
Yeah, I think at the very least, restricting it to the UP is a good idea. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's unsubstantiated at this point, but I've heard that Traverse has already called off football for the fall anyway, so we don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, they're at level 5 too.
Okay,
And with Northern coming back in town, we may be the team that nobody wants to play because of, like Dr. Cherry mentioned, we may see a spike and other teams may want to stay away from us.
Absolutely. But, and again, the only reason I say that, Rich, is we've never micromanaged or voted on what schedule he puts together. But he needs to be able to go to those other
Right.
AD. Say, hey, I got to drop you right now, and he's also looking to reschedule. So we're just allowing him to do that. He's just updated us on where he's at, and we let him put those athletic schedules together.
Right, with the understanding that as we move forward, a lot of things can change, and we'll be getting more of an update from you on August the 12th. And
absolutely. And again, I think the important thing that Alex and I talked about leading up to this, and let's just hypothetically say we move forward. Let's just say it's cross country or another sport, and we're able to have a successful fall season without COVID and other things. That then we revisit maybe as we get towards the end of the year. We can have weekly meetings or monthly meetings. And maybe we get to the end of the year and number of statewide cases have gone down, and we say, you know what, it's okay at the end of the year for you to play in the state tournament, go down and play Traverse City or someplace, right? We don't have to make that determination today. We're just allowing him to build season schedules that are UP based.
Does a blessing have to be seconded?
okay, anything else on Bill, or any comments, any input from any other board members? Alex?
Yeah, thanks for it looks like an awful lot of work went into getting this plan put together, so I'm sure that's been difficult. So thank you, Alex.
I appreciate everybody's time and the dialogue and the questions. It's all helpful in making this information the best that we can for the community and our students.
And again, I think that underlying theme is we're just trying to be transparent as we go through this process, and as difficult it is on every community, these are our first for all of us, and we'll continue to chip away and try to do the best job we can.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any comments from the public, Linda? Okay. And then I'll just open it up, any other board member comments, item number 6, if anybody would like to make any additional comments.
At this point, I think it's a lot of work's gone into trying to make it happen, and I'd move ahead cautiously. That'd be my feelings on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Randall. If there are no other comments, item 7, board president comments, I have none. Item 8, announcements and other meetings. We'll have 2 upcoming meetings, August 12th and August 24th. Those will be electronic at 9 a.m.
Those, if I can clarify, Mr. Rossway, those will be in person for us as a board, but to abide by social distancing guidelines, those will be electronic for the community. So we will get together ourselves in person, but they will be electronic. And just to clarify is, I know I don't want to put you on the spot here because it's a public meeting, but I have to. Since we moved today's meeting to 10:15 to accommodate Mr. Rossway, are those 9 o'clock times going to work for you?
Yeah, it's actually the next 2 weeks is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being accommodating today. So those will be in-person meetings and opportunity for the public to
participate via Zoom. The public will participate via Zoom. We'll meet in person ourselves.
Okay.
Where is that going to take place?
I believe they will be in Mr. Hammerstrom's room. He'll use his equipment to broadcast us.
Okay.
We'll get that out to you.
All right. Item number 9, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Moved by Mr. Starkus, supported by Mr. Randall. Did I get that right, Linda?
No.
You got it right.
All right. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. We'll stick to our protocol. So we'll do a roll call vote. Linda?
Okie doke. Rich Rossway,
Yes.
James Randall,
Yes.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Keith Glendon,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka.
Esquire, yes.
Motion to adjourn approved 7-0.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you very much. And we are
You get-
adjourned, and we'll see you next week.
Appreciate